All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Jonathan Lee, the founder of the Foundation for Financial Education and the DC Metro chapter of the Financial Education Partnership. I really appreciate you guys joining us today, considering everything that's been going on. We're just going to wait one more minute because a bunch of people are in the process of logging on right now. I can see them. And I wanted to make sure that I was going to introduce you guys to our special guest host today and give you a little bit of her background. So just bear with me 1 minute while we start, and I'm going to go ahead and put the disclosure on the screen. So this presentation today is about how to protect your estate from COVID-19, and I think we're going to have a little bit of fun with this today, and hopefully we'll get a lot of really good, useful information as well. So as is typical with our online presentations, we may have people joining us from all over the country. So obviously, this workshop is presented by the foundation and its volunteers, and we are not giving you guys any advice about the stock market or investments during this type of educational workshop. We're also not endorsing any person, product, or service during this particular workshop. And we definitely suggest that you guys seek out your own professional, legal, and licensed advisor help in your area. And everything that you're going to see here is based upon information that you guys can all research on your own, verify, and of course reach back out to us if you want some more clarification and or you want some one-on-one counseling. So we're going to go ahead and get started today. Again, this is about saving and protecting your estate from the COVID virus as well as from the federal government. And we're going to talk a little bit today about what that means. But first, what I'd like to do is introduce you guys to our special guest. We have on the line with us from her location, probably in her home, just like I am today, in the Midwest. Her name is Cheryl Schultz. Cheryl is one of our partners, and she is in charge of our operations nationwide. She also runs an incredibly successful tax practice. It's called ACE Tax and Financial, and she oversees our operations in terms of all of our CPAs, accountants, estate planning workshops, and training and presentations. So Cheryl is a volunteer, and we actually fly Cheryl out here to our DC headquarters office on a regular basis. She probably comes out here once a month, and she will conduct workshops for our agencies and for our companies. And she also does consultations for our clients, mostly focused around taxes and estate planning. And so she is an incredible resource for us, and she's a huge believer in our mission and our cause to make sure that we can bring educational resources directly to the public. And of course, as we said last time, if you missed our Stock Market Crashes for Dummies workshop, the public resources are now in the comfort of your own home, more than likely. I think 90% of the country right now is on shelter-in-place orders, so this is where we are. Cheryl and I have worked together for years, and she has more experience than just about anybody that I've ever met. All different levels of finances and of the marketplace that she's going to share a lot of her knowledge with us today. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it. Cheryl, are you there? I'm not hearing Cheryl, so hopefully you guys are hearing me, and we're going to try and figure out if we can get this connection working. Cheryl, are you there? She may have disconnected. So while we're figuring out how to reconnect her, a lot of you guys are in the DC area, and a lot of you guys are spread out through other parts of the country. And so some people have told me that they think that the internet and these online programs are having difficulty because everybody's using them. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the first slide as we're waiting for Cheryl to join us from her location in the Midwest. But a lot of people have been sending these notes and these pictures around how to increase your property value during a pandemic. And we got a picture of a house that's completely rolled in toilet paper. A couple of my, I say it's just one of my kids, but it's really somebody in my office. They sent me a couple of memes And I'm not even 100% sure what memes are, by the way. But they sent me some memes, and the memes basically said, what are we trying to protect ourselves from? And then the answer was the coronavirus. And then it said, how do we recognize our symptoms? And it said, people have coughs and fevers. And then it said, what should we be doing about it? And then it said, buying as much toilet paper as possible. So I thought that was pretty funny. And I'm not really sure the correlation between stocking up on toilet paper and the coronavirus, but I do know that there should be plenty of supplies to go around. And it's just kind of a very ironic thing. Whenever anybody hears of any type of sort of crisis or state of emergency, there's a run on toilet paper. So, hopefully you guys have a decent amount of stock and you're comfortable at home. I am still waiting for Cheryl to hop on. So if she doesn't hop on pretty soon, I'm going to go get started. Otherwise, I'm going to conference call Cheryl in on my phone if I have to. If I don't hear from her in a couple of seconds. So we're going to go ahead and just start off with this workshop. It's not just about your estate, and it's not just about protecting your estate, but it's also understanding about this stimulus package. And we've been getting a ton of questions and inquiries about what's going on with a $2 trillion stimulus package, how we're going to be getting our money, what does it really all mean? And so we have this new program that's been passed. It's called the CARES Act. And CARES stands for Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act of 2020. So it's a pretty long-winded deal here. But there's a lot of information and content about this stimulus package. The main crux of this is really about where is this money coming from and what are we going to be actually paying for in the long run. So $2 trillion doesn't just disappear. It doesn't just appear out of nowhere. The government's not just going to write a check. They're going to be issuing a bunch of bonds. And so they're estimating right now that the $2 trillion stimulus package, well, not estimating, but it's going to be increasing our national debt by about 10%. So that's a huge deal. And so 20 plus $20 trillion is our national debt right now. And it's going to be increasing by about 10%. So this is a very short-term solution. It's a knee-jerk reaction solution. And my gosh, I know people are desperate to be able to get this money, to keep their businesses going, to be able to, keep their employees employed, and everything that we need to do in the short term to keep our economy surviving here. But long term, we're going to have some effects here. And so we have been, in fact, most of you probably know this, we have been in one of the most favorable economic environments tax-wise that we've ever been in. So 40, 50-year historical lows on income taxes. And, we have been sort of becoming a little bit complacent, a little bit spoiled in terms of what we're dealing with tax-wise. Income tax rates are really low. Capital gains tax rates are really low. And going along with those tax benefits, the federal estate tax limits are really, really high. So I remember back in the 90s during the Clinton administration, I was actually doing some estate planning for people. And if any of you guys are on the phone and you remember what it was like in the 90s, the federal estate tax limit, I'm going to just kind of shoot forward to a screen here so I can show you this, and I'm going to go back. The federal
Jonathan,
estate
can
tax
you hear me?
limit. Hey, Cheryl. Thanks for joining us.
I think I have to keep you on speaker, so this may be, we may have some feedback here, but when I'm on my handset, you can't hear me talk.
Okay. Well, we'll do whatever we need to do to get you into the game here, Cheryl. I appreciate you dropping in your busy schedule and joining us today. I've already positioned you as the guru of all gurus, tax and estate-wise, so you got a lot to live up to, young lady.
Yes, I did hear you. I was hearing you speaking, and folks on the line, there's one thing you need to know about Jonathan Lee. He's very generous with his compliments, so bear with me, okay?
So I was just talking, Cheryl, about my historical recollection of estate taxes. And back in the 90s, as I just kind of pulled up this historical tax rate, I remember so distinctly that we were planning on people having to pay federal estate taxes on anything above $650,000. And so the estate taxes have increased by like such a large number. We're trying to figure out if, what the likelihood is of us being able to continue, or the government being able to continue with all the tax incentives, the low tax rates, and everything going on, plus the $2 trillion stimulus package. What is the possibility of them coming after the estate tax limit, which, by the way, is now, if you're a married couple, $22 million. And if you're a single person, I think it's like $11 million. So can you chime in on that just briefly for us, Cheryl?
Yes, I can. And what we like to think of the estate tax and the limitations on it is really a political football. This is a number that can be moved around. As you can see on your screen, in 1997, we've got $600,000. In 2018, we've got 5.4 million, and now we're at 11.5 million for an individual. What's interesting about this $2 trillion that is being injected into the system, if you really take a look at not only the stimulus that we, most of us, some of us will be able to take advantage of. If you add on to that what the Federal Reserve is doing, the injection is really more like $6 trillion. And we have to ask ourselves.
Cheryl, Cheryl, can you explain to people what that means? Because not everybody knows what the Federal Reserve is doing, and that's an amazing point. What is the Federal Reserve doing that's costing the government trillions of extra dollars?
So the Federal Reserve is, the biggest thing that they're doing is they're lowering rates. They're lowering interest rates. So we, as consumers, will continue to borrow money, will continue to buy homes, will continue to buy money and keep the economy going. They are actually spending over $700 billion in buying treasury bonds back and some agency-backed mortgages. So the $2 trillion is basically only a third of what is being injected back into the economy.
That's amazing, Cheryl. I forget who the famous person was that said, a few billion here, a few billion there, soon it's going to add up to real money. So we're talking about, amounts of money that cannot get overlooked anymore. And there's only really one way, as you've taught me over the years, Cheryl, there's only really one way that the government can get this money back from us, right? We end up paying for it in the long run. And so that's through taxes. So, I think I'm gonna just rewind a little bit, Cheryl, since you weren't here at the beginning, and just talk a little bit about the overall stimulus package as you're kind of involving everybody and educating them right now about it. What are some of the potential things that the government could do to us, and how are we going to pay for all this?
Well, the number one thing that weighs on all of our minds, especially in my profession as owning a tax office, is to increase taxes. We know in 2017, we had tax reform, and for most people, we are all in a lower tax bracket right now. Never was the thought that we were going to have a pandemic and our economy would be affected the way it's being affected right now. Since we're in a low tax bracket right now, we're paying less taxes. Less taxes are going to the government, and now we're injecting $6 trillion. Where will that money come from? This tax reform does have a sunset. That sunset is 2025. So in 2026, we can pretty much be confident that we will all move back into the tax brackets we were in before. There is a real good chance that those tax brackets will even be higher. And I don't think anyone thought that was going to happen in 2017, but who would have known we were going to have a pandemic in 2019 and 2020. So that is more than likely one of the biggest places that we will see our government getting revenue is through taxes. I'm gonna jump ahead, Jonathan, and go back to the estate taxes, because that is the political football that we're playing with. And a lot of people, and don't get me wrong, $11 million is a lot for an estate. But where that threshold was in 2009, it was actually at 3.5 million. So what that meant in 2009, if your estate was over 3.5 million, you now are going to be socked with an estate tax. The estate tax in 2009 went up to 77%.
And that's like now, the highest estate tax, because this table only shows the initial taxes. It doesn't show the highest taxes, right?
Absolutely. So we're currently at 11.5 million, 11.5 million if we can just round it off there, and it's a flat estate tax of 40%. What a lot of people don't understand is what's all included in that estate. Your estate is basically everything that you have. Some of us, if you have life insurance, for instance, so let's just say you have a $5 million life insurance policy or a $1 million life insurance policy. While your beneficiaries that receive that death benefit will not be taxed on it, that is part of your estate. So if I have a $5 million life insurance policy, I now have an additional $5 million added to my estate. So the other thing that gets added to your estate, or it may get added to your estate, is any gifts that you give. A lot of people give away money. They give money to charity. They give people, their kids, their relatives, $15,000 a year in gift taxes, or excuse me, in gifts, because that is the limit right now. It's $15,000. For some people, those gifts may all be added back into your estate. So if we're going to need, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, Cheryl, I mean, you've been doing this for longer than I have, but I have a really interesting story of a client that I ran across about 10 years ago. He was an artist, and I found out firsthand how the government really values these estates. So he was an artist and he passed away, and he left 1,200 pieces of artwork in his attic for his family. So this was his lifetime's worth of work. And the federal government came in and they, just like you said, they valued his estate, his house, his insurance, his stuff. But then they basically went in and cataloged his artwork. And they took the market value of those pieces of art that valued between $1,500 to $3,000 a piece. And they valued his estate at an additional $7 million. And they charged him taxes, his estate taxes on all that money. And his grieving spouse was like, well, can we just donate? Can we just donate the art to charity so that we don't have to pay this tax? And you know what the government said? The IRS said? They said, if you make a donation, you only get credit for the materials of the donation, not for the market value. So we're going to tax your estate on the value of the art. But if you want to make a donation, we only give you deduction for the materials. And these are the types of things that you would never think about. And it can drastically change somebody's taxable estate. And we really want people to understand these things and how they work.
Yeah, that is a very good point, because there's a lot of people right now that are running around thinking $11 million, I'm good to go. And we're not turning this into a political conversation, but there is one party that wants this 11.5 million to continue on. And there is another party that actually wants us to go back to our 2009 levels. And what that is going to mean is a lot of people are going to be paying possibly up to 77% in estate taxes. So putting our estate together is critical when we are doing any kind of planning. And this is something brand new to everyone right now. And I'm no expert on what's going to happen, but we have seen this estate threshold move up and down forever, and because it's the easiest way for the federal government to get more taxes. And we're not even going to talk a lot about state estate taxes, because we're all in different states right now, but that is a whole nother ballpark.
So Cheryl, would you mind just mentioning, because I know a lot of people think, oh, well, I've got this potential inheritance tax or this estate tax. Would you mind just mentioning a few of the different layers? Because a lot of people are going to get taxed more than once on the same stuff, and they're not all thinking about that. Would you mind just going through just real quickly a couple of the different layers of taxation they could have on the same money?
Yeah, we've got, well, and I'm going to throw out a couple, and then I'm going to throw it back to you, Jonathan, because you and I chat about this all the time. But there's going to be, of course, the estate taxes. There may be state taxes. There may be death taxes. There may be inheritance state taxes. And then one of the biggest assets everyone has, or most people have, and this is, I think, really where it's an eye-opening experience for people, is our 401ks or our IRAs. I think most of us understand that when we start taking money out of our IRAs or our 401ks, that we are going to be 100% taxed on that, unless we have started doing a tax strategy early on where we can prevent some of those taxes being paid. So what a lot of people don't understand is, let's just say I have a 401k right now, or you have a 401k right now, and it's worth $1 million. First of all, I want to pat all of you on the back for having a 401k at at $1 million. But upon your death, and I'll use myself as an example, because I have two sons, and if I have $1 million in my 401k, I love both of my sons equally, and they are each going to get 50% of my 401k upon my death. The easy math on that is that they will each get $500,000. Unfortunately, my kids will be taxed just the same way I would have been taxed. So 100% of that $500,000 will be taxed. And unless they are living on the streets, and even if they are living on the streets, they're going to be pushed into a federal tax bracket of 37%. That has nothing to do, and they'll be pushed into the highest state tax as well, or tax bracket. So what this is really saying, and I'm just going to round this off to 40%, I have got a new beneficiary on my 401k, and that beneficiary is the IRS and the government. They will, of that $1 million that I am leaving to my two kids, the government will get roughly, actually in excess of $400,000, and my kids will each get $300,000. If I
Cheryl,
do not,
that tax is just the beginning, right? So that tax doesn't include the taxes that you were mentioning before, which would be the potential estate taxes for the state level, potential inheritance and death taxes, and potential federal estate taxes.
Absolutely. This is all in addition to that.
And if the government wants to raise more money, do you feel like there's a decent chance that if they need to raise more money and they need to collect more tax revenue, that they're going to go after these deferred retirement accounts where people have never paid any taxes?
Yes, they will be going after retirement. We see a couple things that have changed, and I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later, Jonathan, but
right.
Most of us know that at age 70 and a half, our retirement accounts, and we've been told to defer our entire life. And I guess by now we should all know that when The government gives us a break. Is it really for us or is it for them? If I can pay taxes right now when I'm in a lower tax bracket, why would I not do that rather than just giving myself the opportunity down the road to pay more taxes? Let's just say I'm in a
Cheryl,
20% tax. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you've shown me this, and this is startling to most people, and I'm sure this is where you're going to go. But what percentage of the people that you consult with and give advice to are not going to go down and be in a lower tax bracket in retirement, especially with the potential, stimulus package that's going on right now?
Right. Unless an individual is basically living on Social Security, it's going to be 80 to 85%, and it really is 85% of the people that I work with that will be in a higher tax bracket down the road. There's always going to be this unknown. We don't know where taxes are going to go, but we just know they're going to go up. The problem is we don't know what they're going to go up to. And I think that's one of the things that Jonathan and I really would like to impress upon everyone right now is there's a lot of things we can't control. There's a lot of things we can't control right now with this virus. There's a lot of things we can't control with taxes. But what we're trying to educate and teach people on are take control of the things that you can control. I think Jonathan has coined this phrase, and that is we don't know what taxes are going to be in the future, but what we can control is how much of our money is going to be taxed.
Yeah, and that's actually a really great transition because a lot of people, as we're talking about estates, we ask people, well, what is your estate plan? And they say to me, oh, I have a will or I have a trust. And a will is a tool. A trust is a tool. Those are estate planning tools, but that's not a plan. So people don't really understand that a plan is how you use your tools so that you can pay less tax, so you can protect your money from the government, so you can pass more money to your loved ones, charities, and people you choose. But even people that don't have any kids, do they really want all their money going back to the government, or do they want to choose and direct where their lifetime's worth of savings is going to go?
And that is a question that I know both you and I ask all of our clients. And we will always get the person that says, well, they're at least getting something. And okay, I get that, but is that really the way you want your money that I call it the blood, sweat, and tears money. It's the money that you've worked really, really hard for. It's the money that you've saved. It's the vacation you didn't take so you could have a better retirement. And was the intent of doing that blood, sweat, and tears for 40 plus years of your life just so we could give it away to the government? So your
that sounds horrible.
It is horrible. And many times we will run into individuals like you had mentioned, single people, and they say, well, I don't have anyone to give my money to. Well, okay, your number one choice as the way things stand right now is it's going to the government. Most people know that they've got, even if they're single, nieces, nephews, relatives, parents, charities where they want their money to go rather than the number one beneficiary of the government.
And I've sat down with you, Cheryl, in front of dozens and dozens of clients, and you reviewed their taxable estates, and you said, I remember hearing you say, well, Social Security is taxable, your IRAs are taxable, your investment accounts are taxable, even your savings and your CDs are taxable. Did you really plan on everything being taxable in retirement? And I can kind of see that little light bulb going off in their head saying, oh my gosh, I've been deferring my whole life. It never really dawned on me that everything is taxable. And if everything is taxable to you, that also means that everything's taxable to whoever you leave the money to as well. So I've seen that sort of, thought process come to realization on people's faces as they've been consulting with you. But I want to if you could just do me a favor, could you let people know if they're single or widowed or divorced? If they don't have a will, what happens? Like a lot of people say, oh, I don't need a will because, I'm not married or I'm divorced. I don't have any kids. And we've often told people that's not true. What happens if somebody dies without a will?
So if someone dies without a will, it's really considered intestate. And what that really means is the state is going to decide how your assets are distributed. And I know I'm from the Midwest, as Jonathan had mentioned, and I think the most famous in the Midwest right now is, and what's going on, and it will continue to go on, is Prince. Prince grew up in Minnesota. Prince grew up in Minnesota. That's where I'm from.
Right.
And his case is actually in a town that I lived with. It's about 10 miles from my office right now. And this will go on forever. And the bottom line again is do you want the state deciding where your money is going to go? So if we eliminate a large portion of it going to the government, now where is it going to go? So having a will put together is critical, but I want to talk a little bit about a will, because many people think, and again, Jonathan mentioned, it's a tool. But a lot of people, when we talk about estate planning, really the number one objective is individuals want their assets to be passed on as effectively and as efficiently as possible. And sometimes that is with a will. But I want to ask all of you the question, do you realize that there are a lot of different ways to pass on your assets where you don't have to use a will? Whenever the process, the legal process that's coined, if I die, I have a will, it goes through a legal process called probate. And probate is you're going to go and you're going to meet with a legal professional. This is, of course, going to cost your estate money. The probate cost is anywhere from 3 to 5% of what is being passed through on your will. So you'll see on your screen, there's a lot of little wills. And this is probably one of my favorite things and what most people are not aware of. There's a ton of different ways for you to pass on your estate where it doesn't have to go through a will. So you can avoid all the probate costs. One of these, and you'll see on here, is beneficiary. You see beneficiary deed, but a lot of accounts, especially your qualified accounts. So what I mean by qualified, your IRAs, your 401ks, your TSPs, your life insurance, these have beneficiaries on them. What that means is that money does not have to go through probate. It will go directly to your beneficiaries. It's a much more effective and efficient way. Number one, you're not paying for the probate costs, and it's going to get to them very quickly, very, very quickly. The only thing that needs to be produced is a death certificate.
We're actually trying to avoid probate. In all these little wills we have here, we're actually talking about avoiding having to go through the will, right? That's the whole point.
Absolutely. We are avoiding the long drawn out affair that's going to take place and the money that it's going to cost. You see the words on here, TOD and POD. These are ways that many of your other assets can be titled: transfer on death and payable on death. An excellent way to pass on assets that do not have beneficiaries on them. What I do not want anyone to confuse transfer on death and payable on death, and that is the term community assets, I guess, or joint assets. Many times people will say to me, well, I've got my investment account, I have joint ownership with my son. So when I pass away, he's just going to be able to take that over. So I will use it with my situation. Let's just say I have a $100,000 CD, and I don't want it to go through probate. So I put on that CD joint ownership with one of my sons. And this is great. When I pass away, my son's name is Sam. Sam is going to get this $100,000 CD. Now, none of us want to think this way, but we do need to in protecting ourselves and protecting our assets and protecting our estates. If something goes wrong in Sam's life, he gets a divorce, he gets in credit trouble, this $100,000 is considered his. So I'll use the divorce. Let's say, unfortunately, Sam runs into, he's not married, by the way, so I can talk this way. He gets a divorce. It is possible that my $100,000 CD, at a minimum, half of it would go to my ex-daughter-in-law. So do not confuse transfer on death and payable on death with joint ownership. So I think you can see by looking at all of these different things that titling our assets, being able to avoid probate, is a very simple thing, but it's simple in respect that it doesn't cost anything, but it's critical that it is done properly.
So people ask us about wills and trusts all the time. Would you mind just briefly explaining what the difference is between the will and a trust and why people might want to look at using a trust? And by the way, we review people's trusts all the time, and it is not an uncommon thing. And again, a trust is a product, just like a will, but it's not uncommon, as you know, Cheryl, for us to review trusts and people come in and there's nothing in them. So they have these what we call unfunded trusts. Would you mind just talking a little bit about, the benefit or the need of maybe having a trust?
Yeah, I think just to back up 1 second, there's a big common mistake with people putting trusts together, and that is that they're going to be sheltering the assets in their trust from taxes. Now, don't get me wrong, there is a way to do that, but again, it's dotting all those I's and crossing those T's. So we've got two different kinds of trusts. One is a revocable trust and one is an irrevocable. The bottom line is a revocable trust is something that is easy to change. So I put a trust together today, and 2 years from now, I want to change that trust, I can change it. Irrevocable, and there are reasons you should have an irrevocable. An irrevocable trust is, I don't want to say impossible, but it's virtually impossible to change. And we will see a lot of irrevocable trusts is where people are using them for Medicaid or long-term care planning. Again, they cannot be changed. Irrevocable trusts are things where you can avoid taxes, but once you put that trust together, it cannot be changed. A lot of people, one of the biggest mistakes we see with trusts are, we talked earlier about beneficiaries, and many times we will see on individuals' statements on their IRAs, their 401ks, their TSPs, is they have the trust down as the beneficiary. So now we've just opened up a whole nother can of worms. Now that 401k, that TSP, that IRA is now going to the trust. And
Cheryl, if you don't mind me interrupting you 1 second, because this is an important point, and I want people to really hear this. Why do you think attorneys and other people don't tell clients not to make trusts or their estates even beneficiaries on their accounts? So if the attorney sets up the trust, and are the attorneys typically going through and making sure all the beneficiary designations are all changed and properly done, or are people just setting up the trust and then basically left to their own devices to try to figure out how to deal with the estate and how to deal with their beneficiary designations?
That is exactly what happened, and I can speak to that from a personal level. My husband and I, we met with an attorney about, we wanted to update our wills and things like that. And the first thing one of the first things our attorney told us is to set up a trust and have all of our beneficiaries be the trust. And from my perspective, taxes, money management, investments, I looked at him and I said, why would we do that? The reason we have beneficiaries is we want it to bypass the trust. And he had no answer for that. I ran across a client about a year ago now, and Jonathan touched on this earlier. She had a will and she had a trust. And that is not uncommon that we see that. And I asked her, I said, so tell me why you had set up the trust. And she told my attorney told me to set it up. I said, okay, what assets have you put in the trust? How have you funded the trust? Again, nothing, like Jonathan mentioned, was put into the trust. So here was this woman's situation. She paid for a will to be put together. She paid for a trust to be put together. Now, everything is still in her will, and it's going to go through probate. So her attorney, and I'm not bashing attorneys here, guys. I am not bashing attorneys. When you work with your attorney, you need to bring all the other financial people in your life, bring them into the circle of friends, if you will, because she could have avoided everything. Upon her death, probate's going to have to be paid, and there's nothing in the trust. So she basically had a triple whammy here. She paid for the will to be put together. Now it's going to go through probate, and she paid for a trust to put together, and there's nothing in the trust. Jonathan, what do you have to add to trust? Because I know when I'm out in your office, a lot more trusts are dealt with.
Yeah, the DC metro area is famous for having trusts. We have a lot of lawyers, and they love to sell trusts. But what I would say is, listening to you talk and thinking about it, it seems to me like the revocable trusts are the things that the government can change the rules on. So if they change the tax rate and they change the rules of the game, revocable trusts are all going to get affected by that. The irrevocable trusts, however, probably will not. So if we're doing trusts and we're really looking for tax saving strategies, the irrevocable trust sounds to me like, as long as we know what we want to do, it sounds to me like those would be the types of trusts and estate planning tools that are much more insulated from government control and government intervention.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to go ahead and shift gears here, and thank you so much for that really great explanation and detailed storytelling about the trusts and the wills and stuff. Can we just shift gears a little bit and talk about some strategies and, talk a little bit about, how capital gains taxes is different from income taxes and how that might play into us trying to help people create more tax sheltered estates rather than taxable estates the way that everything is right now?
Sure. And one thing, and we need everyone to know is whenever you're doing estate and tax planning and strategies, is that there is really no one size that fits all. And so some of the things that I'm going to talk about here, the last thing Jonathan and I want is for you to hang up this phone and go out and say, hey, Jonathan and Cheryl said I should do this. This is not what it's about. What we're doing is we're exploring, and we want you to understand that you do have options. And these options can put you more into control of things down the road that you may think you don't have control over. So one of them is what we always try to talk with our clients in is who is better to pay the tax? Is it better for me to pay the tax while I'm alive, or is it better for my and I'll just use my kids to pay that tax after I pass away? And one thing that Jonathan had mentioned, and that is capital gains. So capital gains are kind of a tricky thing, but they can be very beneficial. So let's just say I have a property, and we'll say I bought this property for $100,000, and I'm going to use easy numbers here that we can all just kind of do some math in our head. I bought this property for $100,000, and it was in a neighborhood that has just exploded, and it's now worth $1 million. And again, I'm using this for easy math. So if I sell this property today, while I'm alive, I'm going to have $900,000 of capital gains. Now, for most people, long-term capital gains are treated favorably, okay? But they are still capital gains. I still have $900,000 of capital gains that I have to deal with in taxes. If I don't need that money, and I hold on to that property, and it is being willed, it's being payable on death, transferred on death to my kids, they now have what's called a stepped up basis. And what that means is they now inherited this property for $1 million. Its value is $1 million. That basis now for them is $1 million. The cost basis I had was $100,000, but their cost basis now is $1 million. They can turn around and sell it the next day and not have to pay $1 in capital gains. I'm using property and real estate as the asset. This goes for stocks. It basically goes for any asset that you have. So one thing we really try and work with is, where is it better? Who is it better to pay the taxes? Is it while now, if you need the money, people, if you need the money, that's a whole different story. But this is where the tax planning and the strategies really come into play.
So Cheryl, I have a question in the chat box, and I'm going to go ahead and just field it real quick because I think it's a good question. The question is, I'm confused. Should we or should we not put assets and named beneficiaries in a trust? And the answer is, if you have a named beneficiary on your account, you do not necessarily need to put it in the trust because it avoids probate by itself. So if you're just trying to avoid probate, you do not need to put it into the trust. If you're trying to avoid taxation, then you may need to do a different type or an irrevocable trust. So that's basically how that works. Are there ways, Cheryl, that people can sell real estate even if they have very low basis? Or are there ways for them to sell, maybe like right now, they're like, hey, I want to get out of the stock market. Can we sell stocks or investments normally that would be capital gains taxable? Is there a way to sell some of those and not have to pay all the taxes while we're alive?
Yeah, this is really interesting. And there, I use this word in a positive way. It's probably one of the last loopholes left in our tax system. And these are called charitable remainder trusts. And you'll see the words up there, CRUT, C-R-U-T. And these are things you can go and Google it, and you can look up how these work. So let's use our $100,000 asset, and it's now grown, and it's worth $1 million. And I put this asset in a CRUT. So I'm putting it into a trust, a charitable remainder trust. I now can pull income off of this. So many times people don't want to give away their assets or give them to charity because they're afraid they're going to run out of money. So a CRUT is a good way to take care of this. So I put this $1 million asset into this CRUT. It is still mine. I am receiving an income off of it. So I'm not going to run out of money. It pays me income on an annual basis. What is ever left in this CRUT goes to a charity of my choice. Now, you may ask, well, why would I want to leave this money to a charity? I could just leave it to a charity after I die. Many people don't like leaving money to a charity after they die because they want the tax benefits of it. Amazingly enough, what a CRUT can do is I can put money into a CRUT and I get the tax benefit on it now. Jonathan and I worked on a case probably about 6 months ago. It was a couple, 77 and 73, I think, was the couple's ages. And what they did is they put roughly $330,000 into one of these CRUTs. They were paid an income, will be paid an income for the rest of their lives. They were able to take a $147,000 tax write-off.
So they don't only avoid capital gains taxes in that scenario, Cheryl, right? They don't just avoid the capital gains tax. They actually get a tax deduction on top of that, right?
Exactly. They got the tax deduction. And if we can just bring us back, what can we all do with the tax deduction? Think about all these assets you have, specifically your IRAs, your 401ks, your TSPs, that are going to be 100% taxable in retirement. What if I could use some of that $147,000 deduction and do a Roth conversion and not have to pay taxes on the Roth conversion, because I have these huge tax deductible pieces that I can put in my taxes this year?
So many people, Cheryl, don't even know how to do Roth conversions. We're going to be doing a workshop that you are going to be assisting us with, and we're going to be bringing in a Roth conversion specialist. And he's going to be talking about, and this is going to be in 2 weeks, he's going to be talking about the step-by-step of actually how to do a Roth conversion and understanding that anybody is eligible. There's no income limitation or asset limitation to doing those Roth conversions. And most people know right now Roth conversions are on sale. So you get a big break to be able to do a Roth conversion versus just a few months ago, because the market's gone down, and all your future growth, we want all your future growth as much as possible to happen in tax-free accounts. I'm going to go ahead and shift gears here, Cheryl, because we're getting about out of time here, and I just wanted to spend a few quick moments on the Secure Act. So it's one of those things, kind of like the stimulus package, Cheryl, even like the tax cut package that came out a couple of years ago, right? Well, we're going to go ahead and give everybody a standard deduction, but we're going to take away personal exemptions, right? So this Secure Act is saying, hey, we're going to give you guys the ability to defer your RMDs and not have to take them at age 70. You can wait until 72 right now. But when the government gives in one hand, they usually take away in the other hand, right? So what else are they doing with this new Secure Act, by the way, that just went into place January of this year? What else? What are one or two main things that people need to be sort of aware of with the new Secure Act?
Yeah, there's a couple things that probably are the highlights. One is you do not have to take your RMDs until age 72 unless you were already taking them. You cannot stop them. You have to continue to take them. The good and the bad of deferring to age 72 is now all we're doing is we are deferring taxes when more than likely we're going to be in a higher tax bracket because our money's going to grow, taxes are going to go up. So that's the good and the bad of that. I think Jonathan talked about the good, the bad, the takeaway. Probably the biggest thing that is going to affect individuals is if I had an IRA and I'm going to leave that to someone other than my spouse, okay? Let's just say my kids right now, use them as that example. So I'm going to leave my IRA to my kids. They were able to stretch that IRA over their lifetime. So in some cases, not all cases, but in some cases, they were able to stretch that over their lifetime. So we use that $1 million example. They were able to take that out over their lifetime and pay, of course, less tax because the money is going to be divided out over, 60, 70 years, whatever. They can no longer do that. The longest they can take that out, and this does not apply to all IRA money. It only applies to some. It does not apply to 401ks. It does apply to IRAs. So again, get with someone to figure out which of your monies can be paid out over a 10-year period, which can't. So that again is the IRS, the government's way of saying we want to recap all of that. I mean, think of how many baby boomers there are out there right now that are retiring every day. The numbers are $10,000 a day. That's a lot of retirement money. And the government looked at this and said, wait a minute, these baby boomers had grandchildren, they have children, that now they're going to be able to take all of this IRA money that they have and stretch it out over their kids' lifetime. We need this money now. So they can now only do that over a 10-year period.
So, Cheryl, can you tell people, because not everybody knows, if you die and you leave a 401k to somebody who's not your spouse or a TSP or a 403b or any qualified pension plan, if you want to leave your retirement account to somebody that's not your spouse, how are they taxed on it and when?
They are taxed on it immediately. They get a lump sum, and that was basically just backing up to that example I gave. A non-spouse inheriting a 401k, a TSP, has to take it in a lump sum, which will, of course, will be 100% taxable to them and bump them more than likely in the highest tax bracket. The government will be the largest and the number one beneficiary on that 401k. What a lot of people don't realize, Jonathan, is at certain ages, and this all depends if you're a federal employee, if you're working for a private company, that at certain ages that you can actually take money, if your plan provides for it, and most plans do, that you can actually take money in your 401k or your TSP while you're still working and roll it into an IRA. So now we eliminate all that lump sum, because IRAs are the ones that can be stretched now over a 10-year period to a non-spouse.
And you know, the new CARE Act that Congress just laid out, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, actually has loosened up a lot of the rules for allowing people to change, convert, and withdraw these pensions and IRAs into more favorable types of accounts. So, you know, I was sitting with my kids and my family, and we were talking about all the different things that we're missing out on. But I really believe this is, truly an opportunity as we're at home and more focused on family and more focused on our financial lives to start really making changes and reaching out to people that can be a resource for you, which obviously that's what we would like to be. Cheryl, I've got about a dozen questions here. What I'm going to tell people is the point of today's workshop wasn't to answer all of your questions. It was to start getting you guys thinking about some of these other things. And Cheryl, I know you are going to be making yourself available for one-on-one consultations for anybody that wants to talk to you personally about any of their financial stuff that attended this webinar. And I really appreciate you doing this for our foundation. And again, we really appreciate all that you do for us and have been such an incredible resource for our clients and for our financial education partnership. In closing, guys, I just want to say to you, please fill out the surveys. Let us know what you want to hear more about. Each topic that Cheryl addressed with you guys today, we can hold an entire workshop just on that one topic. But again, today we just wanted to give you guys some stuff to think about, get feedback from you so we can come back and we can do some more specific targeted things. And I would strongly encourage you to do a one-on-one with a Cheryl or one of our other senior partners in the organization and see if we might be able to bring some value to your lives and get you to help implement some of these ideas and personalize some of these strategies for you guys. Cheryl, that's our hour. It went by quick.
It did go by quick.
So thank you very much. And don't forget, next week, guys, we're going to be talking about how to protect Social Security from the government and how to maximize your Social Security timing strategies. And we'll be bringing in one of our other national experts to come talk about Social Security. Again, Cheryl, thank you very much, everybody. Please fill out the surveys, reach out to us. We are here for you. Stay safe, stay at home, stay productive. Don't watch too much news. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thanks, everyone.